the executive director of the Melton Foundation. Our foundation is a vivid proponent of global citizenship around the world. We were founded about 30 years ago by a visionary US entrepreneur called Bill Melton. And from that on, we built many programs over the years, promoting the well-being and the international collaboration across boundaries. We run a fellowship program, but we also do many other organizational activities in order to promote collaboration and to organize different activities that are meant to bring the heart, the mind, and the heart together, heart, mind, and brain together in order to do positive change in the world. Today is a very special day. We are in the middle of a Global Citizenship Week that we have organized as Melton Foundation. We are very much within the middle of the week, so we've had some wonderful activities, but today is another highlight because we're very happy to have a very interesting panelists with me today. And these will be the protagonists of the next hour. We will have a nice discussion, conversation about what actually global citizenship means and how we can put it into practice. In a very short formula, we always say global citizenship can be understood as an ethic of care for the world or for each other. But of course, there's many different meanings and implications attached. Today is also a special day because I don't know if you're aware, today is Earth Day. So we're actually celebrating Mother Earth or Father Earth, depending on in which cultural circle you live in. But it's a very special day also to think about how we all can do a difference in maybe small projects, even to help reach the Sustainable Development Goals or to make the world just a simply better place in being a peaceful and collaborative manner. We'll have some housekeeping rules that will be pasted in the chat as well. So we, from the setup, will have first impulse questions from each of the panelists, and then we'll go into more conversational style. You are very much invited to put your questions into the chat box. Meanwhile, we're talking. I'll try to get them into the conversation after the first kind of input round. So we also want to make that interactive. Feel free to put any of your thoughts in the chat box, just as well as you want to express something that you think yourself is important. So we can make this, even though it's a Zoom session, as interactive as possible. Now I have the honor to introduce our panelists, and I want to start with Shesya. She's the country director from the Armani Institute in India. She's actually been one of the founding members. And the Armani Institute, she will talk a little bit more about that, really promotes also responsible action in the for-profit, non-profit world. They have a flagship program in social innovation management. And Shesya herself, she's been managing the country director office, but also she's been making workshops with a lot of huge, great organizations, just to name a few, like the Rockefeller Foundation, the US Consulate, the National Health Authority, University of Chicago, or we've been collaborating as well with her. So she's been also doing workshops with the Melton Foundation. Hello, Shesya.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Stephan, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Second, I would like to introduce to you Edola. Edola is the General Director of the Secretary General of the World Assembly of Youth. And the World Assembly of Youth is also a very special organization because it really brings together all the youth organizations around the world. Full members of WAY, which is the short abbreviation of the World Assembly of Youth, are national youth councils, and they have 140 member organizations from all over the continents. Edola holds various master degrees in fields like business administration, political science, but also in entrepreneurology. She's been working as the Secretary General of WAY for many years, and in that capacity, she's consulted and contributed in drafting numerous youth policies and strategies related to youth issues at regional and international level. Her heart and desire is really to see the youth around the world be prepared to face the challenges we have today and educating them in achieving a sustainable future. Hello, Edola.
Hello, Stephan. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I look forward to chatting with all of you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next, I want to introduce to you Patricia. Patricia is here in a double role. She's head of global education of SLOGA, which is the Slovenian NGO platform for development, global education, and humanitarian aid. But she's also the representative of Bridge 47, which is a platform that was formed in order to bring people from around the world together to talk about global citizenship education as a means to transform societies towards global justice and the eradication of poverty. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, very nice greetings from Slovenia. And again, thank you for having me as well.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I want to introduce to you Sartaj. Sartaj is an entrepreneur who's working in the field of media and global intelligence. He's founded a global intelligence platform, delivering asymmetric outcomes by bringing organizations closer to their communities they want to serve and the leaders they wish to influence. Sartaj is also deeply committed in improving the state of work through proximate partnerships. We have just published together with Ego Monk, the company behind Sartaj, a white paper on global citizenship. And he's also a senior fellow of the Melton Foundation, meaning that he's run through our fellowship program and has been a very good collaborator and active fellow over the years within our organization. So I'm very happy also to have Sartaj on the call. Hello.
Hey, Stephan. Hey, everyone. So good to come back home. The Melton Foundation changed my life for the better. So I'm glad to be back here and serve.
Thank you so much, Sartaj. So as we talked in the beginning, we want to really dive a little bit into the meaning of global citizenships. Challenges just as poverty, climate change, or systemic discrimination often seem too overwhelming for individuals to make a difference. However, it's often the little things that create ripple effects and bring significant change. So taking a global mindset when dealing with problems allows for new perspectives and ideas on approaching challenges. But how do we translate that into practice? How do we ground these concepts? And how do we foster a culture of collaboration and mutual understanding? This is some of the things that we want to touch on today. But first, I want to give the word to Shesia. So global mindset, that's one of the 5 core values of the Amani Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about the Amani does bring that into practice and how these values work in an organization?
Thanks so much, Stephan. And hi again, everyone. You're right. I mean, you know, Amani, we have 5 core values and global mindset is one. Oops, I was muted by mistake. Can you hear me? Yeah. So yeah, a global mindset has been about, it is one of our 5 core values. It's something that really is the North Star that guides everyone in the organization. And it's something that we strive to live by on a daily basis. I'll just go really quickly into sort of like 2 broad ways in which we see this actually implemented in the organization. One way in which we look at global mindset is by trying to see hidden connections between people, between ideas, between systems, and you know, sort of like that leading to building new ones. You know, our team consists of 23 people from 9 different nationalities. We're spread across 5 continents, and we really thrive in this complex, diverse world. And we try and see how we bring in different mindsets just in the way in which we ourselves run as an organization. So that's really, really core to how we structure ourselves first. You know, we're able to utilize then the context and knowledge from our team members all over the world and bring in those contexts into then our delivery of capacity building programs, which is the core of what we do as an organization. So it really is sort of like making sure that we walk our talk in that sense also. And the second sort of more broad thing is that we really want to use this global mindset as a value to catalyze impact across both perceived boundaries, but also real boundaries that exist. And the truth is that there are, you know, a large number of boundaries that exist in the world right now, but it's up to us, up to, you know, citizens like us to actually, you know, traverse them and actually go beyond them. So we run programs across the globe. I mean, our social innovation management program that you spoke of, Stephan, that's had over 570 fellows from I think 67, that's the current count, 67 different countries. And our aim is to keep making sure that we keep bringing in different voices, different perspectives in our students so that they can learn from each other. I mean, it's not only from us, but we want them to learn from each other. So we really try and bring in diversity in that. And something that we're constantly thinking about as an organization also is how we bring in diversity within our curriculum as well, how we're ensuring that there are different global views that are being represented in our curriculum, that it's not only focused on, stuff that you hear only in the global north, but we're bringing in different perspectives and content and context from different places. So that's how we try and live it on a daily basis in our organization and in the work that we do as well.
Thank you very much. The Amani Institute has been a very good collaborator with us, and it's really good to hear, also the idea behind the global mindset. I think there's so many things that we have in common. Next, I would like to ask Edola, as the Secretary General of the World Assembly of Youth, about what do you think, how can we empower the youth in solving our global challenges and actually become global citizen or build that global mindset?
Thank you, Stephan, for the question. Honestly speaking, we have been acting as a global citizen, or I would say empowering young people to be global citizen for many years now, because Edola, which you mentioned earlier on, is a coordinating body of National Youth Council where we tackle 21 youth issues. One of the main objectives why we create those events is to deliver outcome documents or declaration or policies. So in order for that to happen, all the young people gather together and then discuss ideas, thinking of a solution beyond borders, beyond national selective levels or even regional levels. So all of those documents have to come at the international level, then only come back to being implemented in more details at the regional, national, or state level. So we have been doing that in a policymaking, advocacy, and so on at way. But it's looked upon as an issue that global citizenship, it's more into formal education. But what we don't realize is that also organizations like yours and ours, it's instill non-formal and informal education to all the young people on how they act upon or the issues that they want to think about. Think about COVID, the situation that we all are going through at the moment. Information and ideas spread beyond borders within a tiny second. What worked in a country or in a small household or in a hospital or a neighborhood, in a millisecond, it went and also implemented in other countries too, that help in a way to deal with issues like a mental state, which is one of the biggest actually problem currently with the lockdown and restriction of movement and loss of lives and so on. So young people have, I would say, been, and they are and will continue to be the main global citizen. They are the one who think about it right now and how that idea of theirs reaches beyond, I would say, their country or states or region, but also they will think at the international perspective, given the tech savvy that they are. Like you mentioned just now that we are celebrating a day today, but yesterday was Innovation and Creativity Day, which gives young people the perspective of how they not only could be responsible in channeling those ideas beyond borders and beyond, I would say, perspectives, but also at the same time, they are the one who have challenged the norms and they will continue to do so. So Edola, we try to provide the platform not on being the perspective of formally drafting those policies and implementing and them being the ambassadors of bringing that message forward, but also getting that a chance to share those ideas, that knowledge, given it formally or informally, to everyone. I would leave it at that for now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there's so much hope into the youth. I think every generation hopes that the youth will do better, but funny enough, then the older generation always say, oh no, we've been so different and things are going bad. So it's so funny because their hopes are on the young, but then the others always think like, yeah, no, we have had more values than the youth. But I think
we need to help on balancing that intergenerational gap that exists in some countries, but I believe it's achievable.
Yeah, Thank you. We'll be coming back to you as well. So, but now I'd like to ask Patricia. She's been working a lot on global citizenship education. And so there's lots of assumption to make informed decision and demand policies to create a more fair, equal world. So, but is it just a policy, or how can anybody change the world? Can you share maybe some inspiring example or good practices about how each of us can do something?
Sure. Yes, I agree. I agree with my colleagues that were presenting their statements prior to mine, because I think that we all need to work together. We need to have this partnership created. As mentioned already, we have this education. It's basically we are learning from cradle to the grave. So it's not just a formal education that we have to be mindful of, but also in formal and non-formal, and any other ways of shapes and sizes of education in order to have an educated global citizen. I believe that we all can be a global citizen. And I think that, as was mentioned earlier today, maybe we are not in the front page news with our actions. Maybe we are only changing a life of one individual or one family or one community. But when you have many people who are doing these kind of things, then it's like a snowball. It keeps rolling, and the world keeps getting better and better, and it can change. So that's why I believe in this phrase that one person can change the world. Yes, but it depends on how big the change is, but it's for the better. So I think we should all be encouraged to do that. So I was thinking of some examples to show you the different sizes and versions of how you can do that. So in our Bridge 47 project, we have been working quite a lot in the last 4 years on this. So one way was already mentioned. We can influence on different policies, so that those policies can be taken like serious and can be perceived as a holistic approach to sustainable development. So each of us can start a petition, can write to some local politician or even government on some policies. But then you also have I would say the hands dirty approach, when you go on the grassroots and you're doing these little small things that make changes. But then you can also go to local communities. For example, in Latvia, we kind of connected with museums and say, okay, how we can work together to bring sustainable development into life, like in everyday practice. So this was ways of, and we did a manual for other museums to replicate those knowledge. Then in Estonia, we connected with television. So we did it started very small. We did some small intros for their documentaries, and it became larger and larger because people really connected to this, and now they have like a complete program designed. Then in Scotland, for example, we reached out during the pandemic with the National Health Service, and you would say, okay, but how is this connecting? But actually, coronavirus is an example how we are all in this world together. So if we are not tackling the problems together, we're not going to solve it. The virus and the climate change, for example, they don't know the national borders. They are not stopping and saying, okay, no, look, I'm not going to cross. So we have to tackle those things together. And we work together with health practitioners, with nurses, to help them see that they are part of this solving the puzzle. So it's important that they also think of like a global dimension, global perspectives. And in my everyday work, I'm constantly working with small grassroots organizations on this. So I believe we can change the world, and it's not like only the miss of the world can say the peace on earth. I think that everybody from people attending this conference today can say, I can be a champion. I can help save the world.
Thank you. These are very encouraging words, and I know some of the participants here in the chat there or in this town hall will also work on the ideathon later. And I think the idea is also to use stuff like art or expression, different expression, really opening the mind. There's so many levels of things that we can do to make a difference. Before we go into more on the discussion, please feel free, as well as already now, put some questions in the chat, or use the chat as your comment space while we'll have this first conversation. I want to turn to Sartaj. Sartaj, you have a lot of experience also with platforms and media. So on the other hand, we have this youth that come together and some unity and diversity, but we also unfortunately see an increasingly fragmented and polarized world. So how can platforms that maybe foster collaboration be helping to broaden our shared understanding of the world and of global citizenship?
Hey, thanks, Stephan. So a lot of the work we do is at the intersection of, I would say, SDG 9, which is industry, innovation, infrastructure, and partnership for the goals, SDG 17. And I've noticed that that this even came out in the white paper that we did, that this ethic of care for the world is somehow trampled by a non-pluralistic attitude, nationalism. There are other contrarian forces to it. I personally believe that technology and media platforms are those solutions, right? Because we have to create a compelling second narrative to forces that we want to challenge. And the only way of really doing that is providing them safe spaces where they can also do it, to take on the system or the big guy, right? In that sense. An example is some of the work we are doing is to essentially give shows, right, to independent content creators that align with those missions. So a real example is we collaborated with Ruba Al-Zubi, who's a sustainability consultant based in the Middle East, in Amman, Jordan. And she did a series of 6 episodes where she spoke to heads of industry primarily, as well as the civil sector society across the MENA, to talk about how green technologies, how sustainability, climate issues, how do they relate to the changing energy landscape in the Middle East, North Africa region, which, believe it or not, has the highest per capita consumption levels on the planet for energy. And what we noticed is that this is niche content that was consumed by approximately, I would say, 500,000 people consumed this content or were impacted by it. And that led to a ripple effect, right, of other opportunities. Because what we've noticed is it's not just about the youth that wants to engage, it's also big businesses that are also on the sidelines, right? Because they know that they have to be purpose-led, because that is, in essence, good for business to be purpose-led right now, especially with digital natives and millennials being their core customers. So we noticed that they want to participate, they want to especially jump in, but it has to make business sense for them. And I feel like the missing layer to go from youth to an impact catalyst is, how do we empower each one to be a Greta Thunberg, right? How do we empower each one to be a Malala? And right now, Malala is important because she also has a media layer under her, right? She has a megaphone. We believe that when we give every youth a megaphone, or every expert creator a megaphone, we empower contrarian narratives, which should become mainstream. I want to live in a world where in 2030, right, every vehicle is an electric vehicle. But that can only happen if business is incentivized for it, and that needs a multi-stakeholder approach. So I think the leverage point is media and technology, and I think it's perfect because the youth are perfect for it, right? They're digital natives. So I'm incredibly excited about the future.
Thank you so much, Sartaj. So I think the excitement is something that all of our organizations share, because we also work a lot with the youth. In our case, we select our students at the age around 18, 19, and then when they're first university students, and then they go through a fellowship program. But I was very interesting what Edola said about this intergenerational gap and how we can bridge that. Maybe Edola, can you comment a little bit on that, as well as if you want to feed of anything the colleagues have said in the call, feel free to add on this as well.
Intergeneration issues, I mean, that gap breach, so to speak, it's been there for many years and will continue to, unfortunately, to be so for a couple of years more. Not because I don't want to be optimistic at the moment, but we're talking about a lot of countries, differences in culture, which to a certain extent, not everyone can have a seat at the table. But even though when you I would say one of the challenges is still that even though you are on the same generation, others will not give you that opportunity to sit at the table. So I believe that all issues are equally the same in every country. It's just that the percentage that changes, that varies. So with this digital era, or I would say in this tech-savvy era that we are right now at the moment, that gap is getting a little bit closer. It's still a lot of work to go on. That's for sure. That's for sure. But we can have. We are in that era where the parents are now texting their children to come down and have their food. So they are absorbing and they're coming into the perspective of being with the mindset of young people. But then again, it's a work that has to be done both ways. And it could be done formally and informally through events that, like we say, but also through activities where they could tend to understand and look at the perspective of both generations. So still a work on. When we find that formula, we'll definitely let you know, but it's a work in progress, I would say, for the moment.
Absolutely, I fully agree that there's lots to do, but I think with the intergenerational gap, also funny with these innovation technologies that will have Facebook friends and kids are unfriending their parents because they don't want that they see that as well. But you also mentioned the global mindset again, and I think Shazia, that was something that is also very at the core of your programs, and I'm very impressed. I didn't know that you actually already serve people in 67 countries, so that's a very impressive number. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, how do you teach that, or how do you integrate it? And I think some of them are coming from the for-profit world and want to do something new now and want to change a little bit career. So how do you bring the global mindset into then? What are the challenges or aha effects for the participants in your program?
Thanks, Stephan. And, I'm going to touch upon this intergenerational thing also, because, the interesting thing about our program, and I'm using the Social Innovation Management Program as my current sort of like, example, and this sort of like, it will apply to any other program that we run at Amani. But the Social Innovation Management Program in itself actually is the global classroom where we see this come up the most. We'll have people who are as young as 21 and sometimes as old as 65 in the same classroom. We'll have 10 to 15 or maybe even more nationalities within the same classroom. We'll have people who are from private sector transitioners who are trying to make a foray into social impact and have no idea how, and who've spent 20 years in the private sector and say, I've had it and I want to work in social impact now. And those are the sorts of people who come into the program. And we'll have young, fresh out of college students who don't have that much work experience, but who will come in already ready to make impact and to work in social impact. So we really have this very interesting classroom dynamic that takes place. And many people think we're a little crazy when we allow for and we encourage this diversity in our classroom. They keep asking us if it makes our lives as facilitators of the content tougher. And the truth is, it does make our life tougher, because there are multiple times where you will see these polarities come out. But I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like, in our lives, I don't think we're ever going to manage to get rid of polarities. They will exist. And the truth is, you're just going to have to actually embrace them and try and understand how to navigate them in the best possible way. So we encourage completely different opinions. It will lead to some very healthy debate within the classroom. And we are there as facilitators to sort of like hold that space for the people and make sure that they feel that it is a safe space to be able to share their views. Because it's like what Sataj was saying about contrarian views. It's in hearing those contrarian views that you actually learn, right? So it's in meeting someone who actually challenges your worldview. And, it may anger you in the beginning, but the truth is it is a different point of view. And the better, the easier and the faster that we actually open our minds to not necessarily agreeing, but just open our minds to hearing a different point of view and hearing and understanding, the context from which someone else comes from. It already is multiple levels higher than going from, anger and saying, hey, you don't think like me, so I don't like you. And that's what we see, come out so beautifully in our program, because you'll see that creative tension that happens in a classroom because of the diversity, because of the different contexts. But I think that's what the program has been built for. It's been built for bringing out those different things. We can never be prepared as facilitators about what's going to happen in the classroom, but I think that's the beauty of it. And just one more thing that I wanted to share, which came up, when Patricia was answering about what is the role of each person and what are examples. I mean, we have some of these global programs at Amani, but we also have programs. For example, we have a leadership for growth program, which is really targeted at mid to senior managers of small growing businesses in India. It was designed keeping that in mind. Last year, everything went up in flames, and we had to move it to an online version. It was always in person, and the minute we moved it online, one of the things that struck my team was, why can't we open it up to neighboring countries who are within the same time zone? Because we know that their mid to senior managers have the exact same problems. So why aren't we opening it up? And we said, let's try. And we opened it up, and it was beautiful because we had 2 people from Pakistan come into our program. We had 1 from Nepal. And anyone who knows about the conflict between India and Pakistan will know how tough it is to have people, participate, to have 2 people from Pakistan participate in a program in India. And the fact that we managed to actually cross those boundaries just by going online and thinking, hey, why not? We know the problems are the same, so why not actually open this up? These are small things, but they make such a huge difference. It changed the dynamic of our classroom. It was, the program wasn't designed initially for this, but the change design and the change participation really helped us bring the content to a whole new level. So, while there are challenges in bringing in that diversity, I think we really embrace those challenges because they lead to learning like, never before. So that's my pitch for
Very
diverse
interesting. No,
classrooms.
absolutely, and I really can share that perspective, or the things that you brought up with Pakistan, India. We, in our foundation, we also have very different cultures represented, and we just had the day before yesterday a session between Chinese students and Indian students. And at the moment, of course, there's also on the macro scale quite some conflict in the kind of borders. But bringing these young students together and sharing about their culture, in the end, they really recognize that there's so much they have in common, all their life aspirations. And so it was really a unifying kind of element way below this nationalistic kind of noise that you can hear in the media. And I think that's also a little bit related to the question that Ashita put in the chat is, when we look at these platforms interaction where we have a lot of some very positive elements like we have here, Zoom, or there's Facebook groups, Instagram groups that really want to collaborate, but there's also this risk, how can you mitigate the difficulties of hate speech or all these other things that maybe go really in contrary to the beautiful, collaborative, nice world that we sometimes maybe in a bubble because we're so much working for the good. So how does quality control happen in such scenarios, Sataj?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ashita. One thing to just riff off what Shazia said, I think global citizenship is also a conditioning exercise. We keep seeing narratives of hate, narratives of polarity, narratives of fascism, invading our echo chambers, right, that we live in. And that's what we either learn to love or learn to hate. So I think the moment we give echoes and affirmations of global citizenship, pluralism, they also tend to exist longer, right? They stretch out longer. Responding to the question of hate speech and quality control, so to say, we have learned, or at least my thesis is, that we want to be a space for expert creators, right? And contrarian voices. Now, contrarian voices exist both on the far left and the far right, right? We have to make a choice as an organization probably of what bias we have to endorse. I completely understand that A, I'm a capitalist, and B, the fact that it is an imperfect world. So who do I want to endorse that maybe helps the most amount of people in the time that we have on the planet within our generation? So for example, I am pro-climate, right? We call it a climate crisis and not a climate change, because I think we've crossed climate change already, right? Now, I want to give my technology platform or my networks to people who want to pull the future closer, but it is a climate positive future. And we curate that. And that's going back to this classic problem of newspapers who said that whoever owns the newspaper owns the megaphone, and then YouTube, where everyone has a megaphone. We believe that the right space is somewhere in the middle, like it's like the Goldilocks problem, right? Most things are good in the center. So that's the same challenge here. We have to give a bunch of narratives, right? And it cannot be also a Caucasian perspective on climate change. It has to be a Eurasian perspective. It has to be an African perspective. Within pro-climate narratives, a diversity exists. And our job is to give a platform, hopefully, to all such narratives, but within that spectrum to exist. I don't want a flat earther to be, at least on our platforms, right? And I think we have to be mindful at the source itself on who gets the chance to be on the megaphone, because we've seen on Twitter and other social media channels that when everyone gets the megaphone, you have ripple effects down the stream where you have to filter it, remove it, ban them. And I feel like learning from technology, we're thinking a bit differently on who gets the megaphone.
Yeah, the megaphone is always an issue about who's the loudest, and the sublime voices. It's difficult sometimes to bring them in, especially in global citizenship. We also had a discussion about if it's a really elitist kind of concept, if we're having just people that have access to resources, access to travel, and so forth, that these are the ones that we maybe in a more cosmopolitan way are global citizenship. But I think it came already out quite clear from some of the things that you said, that everybody can have an impact. But moving from the kind of more informal, formal, or the grassroots, I'm also interested in a little bit, Edola, and the policy level. I know you also have worked with the United Nations, and you are seeing also the big picture. So not only with youth, but is global citizenship something that the United Nations somehow, yeah, it's in the name, but is real politics more important, or is that collaboration from the youth, the sense of urgency having a big effect or good effect on the people in the suits as well?
Whether we like it or not, young people always have made a difference, either given at national or state level, or even at the United Nations, because they have the platform and they have the voices. But like you say, you're talking about two different platforms. The suits, they are made from the governments themselves, so it's up to them whether they want to hear you at the local level when you're talking to them, or they want to hear you at the United Nations for that matter. But globalization has been an issue with its pros and cons now, whereas global citizen, you can't prevent that end of the day, because it's, or you can't limit that for that matter, because it's someone, I would say, I don't know, right now in New York or in India or wherever they are, they're thinking about an idea how that could be achievable everywhere else. And if I see fit as another individual, I would implement it. I don't have to just get the policies to be approved. It will be perfect. If the policies are approved, or I would say implemented, yes, that would be the perfect picture. But you know that says where think global and act local. Now all young people are thinking local and acting global. The world has changed. They all became ambassadors of their voices. And I hope they will go through not only the suits, but also to the policies for that matter.
Thank you so much. I really agree. I mean, there's this kind of mismatch, but I often heard people talking about global citizenship as well, you know, that in the United Nations, people want to collaborate, but of course, if they would take over their suits, they would be much more collaborative than the national governments ask them to act in the more real political context. But going more from the formal to the educational again, there's some question in the chat, and I think Patricia is the really qualified also to answer this, because she's been working on global citizenship education quite a while. So there's a question in relation to the PISA study. I don't think everybody knows what that is. So the question is here, is it really a chance or a danger to global citizenship to have kind of a standardized testing within these global citizenship OECD guidelines about how to test if somebody has a global competency? But to give more background, maybe you can explain shortly what that PISA study is and how they measure it, and give us a little bit of an outlook about how do you think is global citizenship education entering in the schools? How can we how can we formalize it more in schools and university to make it part of the regular learning of people?
Yes, thank you. So PISA is a kind of study that is as mentioned, is checking the global competencies. It's made of two parts. So one, it's that usually the 15-year-olds they get this questionnaire and they are evaluating their own competencies. How do they view? And this questionnaire is quite long. It says everything from how is this connected in schools, what are the challenging that you would need these competencies for. And then the second part is that usually the state or the government, the ministries for education do their review. So depending on the country, some countries decide to take both of them, some countries decide to take just one or two of them. But it usually, because it's like an overview of the same questionnaire for every country, it's a good example to compare. So it's also good to bring those results from PISA to the policymakers because they have this, they can see where they are, and usually the governments like to compete with each other. So this was the case actually in Slovenia. For the first time, we participated in the last PISA. In 2018, and these global competencies were quite lower than in the other countries. And our ministry, which was kind of education, was kind of reluctant to put global citizenship education in schools as we don't have it as a regular subject. We have it quite interlinked between some subject, but it's not mandatory. It depends on how teachers would like to include them. And actually, the ministry realized that yes, we need to do something about it. So the global competencies, as Edola mentioned, it's not something that you can choose whether you want to have it or not. If you want to survive in this new world, in this high-tech world, you need to equip the young people and even the other generation with these skills so that they can work and not only survive but also thrive in this new world. So it's quite crucial to have those. And so back to the question of how to put this GC in the secondary schools, it depends. It's not, I think that we should not limit it only ourselves as global citizenship education. It's also education for sustainable development. All of those are called transformative education. Basically, we need the education that are value-based education, that puts, the holistic approach, that look at the problem, at the global problems through different views, that incorporate different solutions, not only I would say the global north solution, but also maybe look how in the global south people are tackling these problems. And you have this Eurocentric view that only people from Europe know and we can teach others, but many problems and even solutions are already out there in the world, but because we are so Eurocentric, we are not using the knowledge and the expertise even from indigenous groups or marginalized groups around the world from global south to help us. And this is why we need those kind of things in the secondary or even in the kindergarten, so that this is really something from age 0 until that. So it's in that way we can change the community, because the mindsets are changing, and with changing the mindset, then we're changing our behavior. And if we change our behavior, then we can see the actual change in many different views. And of course, if we are looking for solution, maybe just the knowledge that you get by getting these global competencies, that if you find a solution for some problem and it worsens the problem of something else, for example, you find a solution to something, I don't know, related to climate change, but in fact it reduces, it increases inequality or access to something, then it's not the right solution. So we have to look at this holistically. So I think this is really important. And I think that maybe if we push with different angles for these things to be incorporated in schools, in formal, non-formal education, in everyday life, I think that we can make it. But that's why the governments are still policy-based organizations. So we still need policies, but we also need people like Malala, like Greta, and people who are actually take to the streets, and others who will join them, to show support to some of the issues that are close to heart. You know, climate change and climate crisis is not a problem that was like happened 2 or 3 years ago. It's a problem for many decades. But now with new voice and with the support, the government started also taking some change. You know? So I think that we need to help our governments accountable, and that's why we need to have those competencies.
Thank you. That was also a very good motivational speech for people to get really into the shoes of global citizenship education. I just wanted to ask Edola if you want to add something on that from her experience about global citizenship education, the role of schools, secondary schools, to support this formation of the youth.
Yes, I always advise the young people that education is something that you do for yourself, not for your parents, not for your relatives, not because of the society. It's a knowledge that you gain for yourself, and you expand it and share it and help others as well. But when we're talking about the education system, we had a couple of events even at the UNESCO, started way back. Even one of the last one was in 2012, talking about how important is the amendment of policies and changes of that. Since when you look at any other policy in regards to youth issues, to a certain extent has been, I would say, amended or improved and so on. Unlike education, that has not been done so for the past 50, 60 years, unfortunately. And only certain countries has, I would say, upgraded their system. So to instill and bring global education to the formal education system is going to be a work in progress. But that's where we come in as organizations and institutions, private institutions that could somehow instill that knowledge to young people and other platforms to work on that. I know, Stephan, you want a perfect world in a perfect situation, but unfortunately, we need to work. Otherwise, we would have finished. I mean, would have resigned, isn't it? If everything was perfect. So it's always a work in progress. It's good to look at success stories. You know, that would help other countries to improve on. You know, and work on that perspective. So and not just work with the ego perspective that, oh, why that country worked on, or how Europe or America or Africa or Asia for that matter works on that. But we all need to use the success story and implement it to a certain extent, whatever fits our budget or requirements and so on.
I'm really interested about your perspective about or help mitigate the many crises that they actually have produced. I mean, climate change is much because of carbon emissions, human rights, because of exploitation of labor in the international kind of sphere of value chain creation. So what's the role of the companies in all that?
Yeah, great question, Stephan. You know, one thing that we've been talking a lot about at Amani is, you know, so far, a lot of our work has been focused on the social impact sector and working with NGOs, philanthropic organizations, and other players in the sector, social enterprises. And for the past year or two, a lot of us have been talking about how we should not restrict it to that impact. And, you know, when you're talking about any of the things that you spoke about, whether it's climate change, whether it's global citizenship as a whole, all of these things, they need to be conversations that are had not only in the social sector and not only by NGOs and organizations like us, but they need to be actually at the forefront of conversations in the private sector as well. The resources are there. So why not have these conversations there? So one thing that we as Amani have been thinking a lot about lately is how we take these conversations and not restrict, and I'm talking impact at large, like impact in any area, but how we don't restrict impact conversations only to the social sector, and how we bring it front and center to leaders, to people in the private sector. Uh, it's something that we're trying. We still haven't managed to figure out how, but it's definitely something that we as an organization are also thinking about, and we're hoping that more and more people actually start having these conversations. One way in which we've tried to do this is that, you know, we have these large events as a Mani Institute. We host these events on social impact and on topics and what it's like to build careers in social impact. But what we do is we invite a good number of representatives from the private sector to actually talk about what impact is for them. We want to start amplifying those voices also and bringing them into these conversations. Instead of saying private sector is bad, we're saying private sector is fantastic. There are ways in which you can actually do so much if you just were a little more involved. So how can we help you do that, and how can we help you like lead the conversation? And there are a lot of private sector organizations, corporations, large corporations who are doing good work in this space, but there are you know, and who you can amplify, but there are also a large number who aren't doing enough, right? So our role is to sort of like try and see who are the ones who are already creating and who are having these conversations, who are making the change. How can we bring them to the forefront and use them as sort of ambassadors to start the movement, which we know will happen slowly but surely, but start the movement of actually talking about impact with more people beyond just NGOs. So I think it's a great question. It's something that we're trying in our own small way, and I'm sure everyone else, Sartaj wants to say something, so Sartaj.
Yeah, I'm sure Sartaj can add on that as well. He's been working with leaders, women leaders as well, with Egomon.
Yeah.
Impressive work, so please feel to add.
So we do, I would say like the majority of our customer base, fortunately or unfortunately, is Fortune 100, right? And this is in essence, big, evil, mega companies, right? They are not very different from countries, to be honest. And what we have to recognize in large institutions, which have significantly a lot of resources and money and ability, is that they are at best benevolent dictatorships, right? Change really then happens at the top, because what happens is, let's take an example of the largest private company on earth, right? Which right now is, I would say, Apple. Apple made a demonstrated commitment to go completely clean in its supply chain from a climate perspective, responsible resource perspective, till I think by 2030, right? This happened essentially. This was born from Tim Cook's personal investment into it. Now, the moment that happens at the top, that creates a space also for managers all the way down to say that I also believe in this. I'm not saying that they did not previously disbelieve it, right? I think they were equally committed to it at that point. But it goes back to that question, right? The loudest voice in the room suddenly said it was okay to be pro-climate. And now every voice is allowed to speak up. And I think the same phenomenon plays out in large businesses, large corporates, and probably any large institution. I think some of our work probably should be, how do we create asymmetric outcomes, right? How do we do that by influencing these leaders? Because the reality is, if we could even move one leader to be more like a Patagonia, it's going to create a sizable outsized return. So I think it's a double-sided market. We have to mobilize a lot of youth because that creates pressure, but also how do we get 100 CEOs, right, of the biggest companies to go on the other end?
Thank you so much, Sartaj. Yeah, the hour is running. We are almost already finished, but there were some more questions. Apologies if we could not address them all. We'll keep up the conversation, but before closing, I just want to give everybody in our panel a last kind of statement, voice, something, carte blanche, anything they want to say about global citizenship and its meaning and maybe motivational aspect of it. So we'll start with Patricia, and then I'll call your names, and thank you already for your wonderful words. In parallel, though, I'm going to open up a poll. Just we're doing evaluation, live evaluation of our session. So all participants, please don't be alarmed or scared. There's going to be a pop-up window that asks you some, just how you like the conversation. It would be really great if you can give us feedback while we have here our last round of our participants giving us some ideas about global citizenship. So Patricia, please.
Thank you. So for my closing word, I would like just to say that we need global citizenship education and global citizens, because the global education kind of encourages us to reflect upon our assumptions. It's so we can make an informed decision, and then we can demand some actions from ourselves and from others, and all in order to make a more just and equal world. Because I think that if we have those things in mind when we're doing things, the slow changes can have this ripple effect and can bring us to a more just and just world. And this is something that we haven't talked about it, but it's just the the Agenda 2030 is also around the corner. It's only 10 years, so I think that we need to start acting now. And I have this glass with me. It's some may see it as a half empty, but I see it as a half full after, or even overflowing with after our today's discussion. So thank you again for inviting me, and hopefully we meet again.
Thank you so much. Shazia.
I'll maybe keep it short. I just want to sort of like wish everyone, we've been speaking about polarities today and about different mindsets. So I really hope that everyone sort of embraces these differences and embraces the polarities and, navigates them. That's the first sort of step in towards global citizenship. It's the first step towards looking at different points of view and, being open to them, pushing yourself out of your own comfort zone. So I wish you a lot of success in celebrating the differences rather than, using them as something that divides, but really use it as something that you can celebrate and bring people together with the differences.
Wonderful words. Thank you so much, Sarkaj. And then we have Edola giving the last word.
Sure. I think, especially for the fellows here, global citizenship is a muscle. We have to keep exercising and developing it. Right now, global citizenship is like coding. Not enough people do it, but trust me, in the future, it's going to be like writing an email. Everyone has to do it. So keep working that muscle.
Thank you. We'll have to, there's no choice. Edola, please.
Okay, yes, when you are left the last, then you have to agree with everyone else. What has been said is wonderful and inspirational. And I would say to young people, keep it up. Whatever you are doing, never give up, because change is challenging, but never wrong.
Very nice words. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So big thanks to all of you. Edola, Sarkaj, Patricia. Shazia was a really interesting, intellectual, great conversation. Thank you so much for all your inputs. Also, all the participants here on the panel, I hope you enjoyed it. For the ones that participate in the Ideathon, I hope all you we have given you some new ideas about project ideas and also about endurance. That change takes some time, but when you do the first step, you're already one step ahead of anybody else. So keep on working on the good stuff you're doing, keep on collaborating, check out our websites or the websites of our colleagues here to get more information about what we're doing, and have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you so much, and we'll see you around.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you. Have a nice day.